Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Soulganize Your Life podcast. And I know that the more that I'm soulganizing my own life, the more I'm enjoying being an actual human. And as a psychotherapist, I know that the outer circumstances of our life are definitely impacting us. And one of the ways that that's happening is through what I would call the psychological ego, which is a sense of separate self. But the other way that's possible when you open up to it is the divine soul connection to all that is. And that's why we're having this podcast. It's really important to know the difference. And I believe that our guests are here to help us discern that. And Kristi is with us today, and she's going to help us relate to this inner conflict within ourselves and give us ideas on how to integrate these two perspectives into one full, beautiful human experience. And why is she good at this? Because she is a human. So she will be able to speak to this, and we all will. But she specifically is a healer as well. So Kristi, jump on in and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Kristi Borst, and I am what I would call a spiritual healer and earth intuitive. The earth intuitive is kind of a label, which I hate labels, but which to me means that I discern messages from nature, from spirit. I also am what I would kind of call an emotional transducer. So when there are heavy things going on in the world, which is like constantly, I am one of the earthbound beings that is aware of those energies and bringing them back to neutral.
Wow.
So yeah, so it for years I didn't know that I was doing that. I just felt like really off kilter a lot of times. But now that I have kind of found most of my puzzle pieces, it makes a lot more sense to me.
Wow. Well, this is great because I've never heard anyone articulate their job here on earth the way you just did. And I'm guessing there was a time in your life where you weren't aware that this is all your life path, right? To be these things. What was your life like before that when you were growing up?
For me, when I had this deep connection to knowing that anything is possible, as most of us do as children. And I actually was playing and scratched my face and healed that boo-boo because my dad freaked out. And I thought that he was mad at me. So I just, made it go away.
Wow.
And I didn't remember this because he told me, you can't do that again. You can't show anybody that.
Wow.
That's not allowed. And I was really like an obedient child. So I hid it so deeply that I didn't know it was there. And this connection I have to spirit, source, God, all that is, whatever you call our higher power or that connection point from which we come. When I was going through difficult times in my childhood, if my mother had been mean to me and I was in my room and kind of playing over what had happened, there was a voice in my head that would say, that's not the truth of who you are.
Wow.
And so I'm so grateful for that presence that stayed with me even when I felt lost within myself.
Wow.
The way I was able to channel that, or the socially acceptable way for me to channel my abilities, was through writing and artwork. So out of school, I became an advertising person, graphic designer, started my own business when I was 27, did that with passion and gusto for many years, helping people through their, small business people survive in their quest to serve. And I would just know what the message was that people would need to hear to connect with that product or service. Wow. I would get the image of the logo, I'd just sit for a while and it would come to me. So I now recognize that was channeling.
Yes.
Didn't understand that at the time.
So
And
going
then,
back, oh, I'm sorry. I was saying
sorry, go ahead.
going back to the beginning, what was it about your dad's ego, do you think, at the time that led him to ask you to hide something as valuable as being able to heal yourself? What was going on for him?
Well, I think it's multifaceted. You know, part of it was my path, which I think a lot of us are on a hide and seek path
Yeah.
with our true nature, and we set up, you know, these obstacles. So that's a big one. The other thing is this was 1961, coming out of an era where I don't know if you've ever heard of the McCarthy trials, where they were, you know, they were investigating people for, you know, all kinds of things. So I think there was a lot of fear around this. I mean, what are you going to do in 1961 with a child that can heal, right? So I think to a large extent, it wasn't my time or place. And I believe that it was something that, as a soul, I had to experience and also experience the joy of finding myself.
And so, oh yeah, there is a joy in that for sure. I like that you just said that, because like I said, the more I Soulganize, the more I'm enjoying being a human, and all of our quirks. But going back to your childhood, you know, I feel personally that we all develop some level of protective device, which is the ego, according to Freud, right? And your dad's really wanted to protect you, just period. It wasn't that you were being a bad girl or wicked in his eyes. It was really, he just thought, well, this is something that the collective ego might come after my kid for, and really wanted to protect you. And then you said you were an obedient child, so you would just kind of sit and reflect, you know, on what is it that my parents want for me, and would do that. And then it sort of let you down a path of becoming really good at business, right? The advertising and giving other people what they wanted, from an egoic perspective, right? Like consumerism and things like that. And that all makes a lot of sense. And so what was going on while you were still sort of quote unquote this regular person, right? Where were you had you shut down your abilities completely, or you were keeping them secret, or how was that
Yes,
working?
I had shut them down completely, other than what I now recognize as I was channeling it through art and writing. And
That was a sort of art that was acceptable to
yes,
egos, right? It wasn't
yes.
like angels and things like that. Yeah.
But
So
the negative aspect of it is that there was a belief, and I say belief as lowercase b-e, capital L-I-E-F. There's often lies within our beliefs. So my belief was, if even my dad, who loves me so much, can't accept me for who I am, first of all, who am I then?
yeah.
And second of all, who can love me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say the ego believes things and the soul knows, right? So when you're in your room and you're hearing that is not the truth of who you are, that's a soul telling you what it knows. And the ego is just running around trying to figure out, well, what should I believe so that I'm safe and that I'm secure and that I'm, good American, and do a consumer.
And blending, right?
Yeah.
We do a good job of blending in, and that's not really why we're here.
Yeah. And I think sometimes the ego does the opposite, right? It projects itself out completely and wants to be special, which was more my issue. But, yeah, I think whatever way it shakes out, right? We all had a way of surviving whatever it was that we needed to, because we were around other egos. And sometimes those egos are very well-meaning and sometimes they're not, but it sounds like yours were. And in the time period that you were growing up. And so there must have been a moment where you said, okay, I'm not going to deny this anymore. What was that like?
So I think for me, that there's so many things that almost like cross over for me into the realm of magic. And I look back and I wonder how many, road signs did I miss? But in 2010, I was driving to Rhode Island. I live in Maine. I was driving to Rhode Island to see family. And in the distance was a river, and I could see an eagle flying up the river. And the eagle actually landed in the center of a 3-lane highway in my lane. And I had cars on either side of mine and cars behind me. And I just kind of telepathically said to the eagle, like, please fly up. I can't avoid hitting you. I did brake a bit, right? But I couldn't stop. And I had a minivan, and the eagle flew up my windshield.
Wow.
I get goosebumps when I talk about this.
Wow.
And I think that it like activated something in me, or, kind of woke me up to some extent, because like within a week of that, I saw an ad in the paper for a Reiki training. I had no idea what it was, but something told me,
Yeah.
I had to take that class. So I took it. Nothing really happened. People were talking about chakras. I had no idea what chakras were. Finally, in the middle of the class, I say, "You keep saying this word chakras. What's a chakra?" So that was explained, and it's funny because now, like, the chakras are the main part of my work. That's where I really dig in. So from like 2010 to I think like early 2012, I was kind of going through what I almost feel is like a deprogramming process of letting go of a lot of the restrictions and boxes that I had agreed to live within.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yesterday, someone on a podcast told me it was her listening space, or her flux space. Like, it was a time where she really just gave herself permission to not be a good consumer and not be a good, taxpayer. And she quieted her mind, and she sat and she waited. Is that sort of what you experienced, or did you do active healing?
No, mine was more like reading, going on YouTube, exploring quantum physics, things that I think were preparing me for what was coming next. And it really, the turning point for me was in early 2012. At this point, our kids were in high school. So it's almost like I think I had a soul contract with my children too, to be a normal person while they were children, right?
I feel like I have the same.
And then I can get woo, right?
I feel like I have the same one. And my daughter's in her last year of senior year. Yeah, or her last semester. I'm like, okay, it's going to happen now.
So it was in early 2012. I was doing this. I was doing fractal artwork. This is one of my pieces here, and I was in a metaphysical show, and some of my friends were there, and they kept saying to me, "You need to have a reading with George. You need to have a reading with George." George is a Native American. I sat down with him, and I had been having readings from that through that 2-year period, and people had said to me, "You're a great healer," and I would just kind of brush it off. I had kind of started healing myself more intently. For example, I burned myself on the oven rack one day, and I had just read a book about multiple timelines, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to go to the timeline where I didn't burn myself, and kind of worked on it a bit. And in the morning, it was just a little pink mark. It never blistered or anything. So I thought when I would get readings, people were seeing that, right?
Wow.
So I sat down, and he said, "You're a great healer, right?" And I just was like, okay. And I kept denying it. 9 times he said it to me. That's all he kept saying. finally I said, well, if I am, I don't know how to get there from here. And he said, that's because when you were a child, you did a miracle and you scared your parents.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when he said that, when the movie came back to me of what had happened.
Wow.
And it's really interesting because at several points through my life, well, let me just explain. I had scratched myself on a fort that my dad had built, and it had like chiseled ends to the boards, kind of like a pencil, not that sharp, but so I had scratched myself on that. And I would have this memory of one hand tracing the shape of that end of that board, and the other end, or the other hand, wiping on my cheek. And I really feel so much gratitude to that child self, because she was told or knew to anchor that memory.
Wow.
Now, I would just get that fragment, but I didn't have a context for it. It was like, one like 3-second memory that would come back. So when he said that, that memory got its context.
Wow.
And so I said to him, okay, I understand. My dad had transitioned before that time. So I said, if I made a contract with my dad to shut that down, I want to rescind that now. And we just sat and we prayed together. And within like, I don't know, short time, even that day, I did a little mini healing on someone that was there. Things just started to come back to me. And I just let it happen. I stopped getting in the way of myself.
Yeah. And I do, like when you said, rescinding that contract, right? I have a Reiki master myself, and she often talks to me about those things. There's so much free will and choice we have once we're connected to a soul, right? Because then we go, okay, so all those things that I'm unaware of but feel are off. Could be a contract, it could be power I gave away and I just need to retrieve again. And when people do that, like, it's endless possibilities, versus the ego is just this limited box. And, when you open your mind up to working with someone like you, just, it's endless, the amount of stuff that can be retrieved or cut, or, to make you be who you are. And I think that, when you're speaking about that, if you could say a little bit more about that, because I think it's interesting why we as a soul would make a deal in the first place like that, or why we would as a kid. And so can you speak a little bit more about that?
So I can really I hope this answers your question, but I'm going to speak to this from my own experience of, I know that I have lived other lifetimes.
Me too. Mm-hmm.
And I have a waking memory of being an energy healer, a medicine man, in a you could call it past life, concurrent life, whatever you believe about time. And in that lifetime, I was a boy. I came into a tribe. I was embraced for my gifts. And, I took over from the medicine woman at an early age. So in this lifetime, I'm a girl. I come in and I have 180-degree different experience. I'm told I can't be that person. I have to shut it down. And I think that it's important to have these understandings that we do choose to have different experiences.
Yes. Yeah.
So
like
that's one part of it. The other part is that there is so much opportunity in every challenge.
Right.
The challenge may be your biggest space of growth and potential.
So you're saying,
if we're always avoiding the challenge, we're missing it.
So you're saying that you may have made a deal with yourself to have the opposite experience that you had before. And theoretically we can't understand that in a soul level. We literally have to come back as a human again. Like everything has to be in the human form that we're making deals with while we're in the human form, probably. And so, yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. And I think that's probably spot on about when you can accept that maybe the challenge, as I said, another podcaster said, how much are you enjoying your fear? And I said, what? Like, that's brilliant. Like, how are we enjoying it? To your point, like you said, maybe now I'm enjoying the fact that I had been afraid and overcame it versus just walked in last time and everybody loved me.
Yeah. And it's funny because I know that in that lifetime, I didn't have self-confidence because everything was just handed to me. And in this lifetime, I kind of have more of a, I don't know if it's like, I'd call it like a faith in myself or just,
Yes.
the soul has been rah-rahing me since I was a child to know, okay, it's going to be okay. You're going to get it.
Gosh, that's so true and so accurate and so needed to hear for people that are afraid, because like you said, the confidence is a feedback of that you did do the hard thing. You were sitting in your fear and you did it anyway, versus your other lifetime where you didn't have any fear. You were completely accepted and you realized, I don't have confidence in my abilities because I didn't work for it, or have to have faith in myself. Other people had that faith. And I do think that's what the age of Aquarius is that we're coming into, right? Is completely and totally having faith in your individual perspective. Not that it's more important than, like, my viewpoint isn't more important than yours, which is the ego's way of looking at things. But I do think my viewpoint needs to be accepted by me, right? And yours needs to be accepted by you. And somehow that's going to raise us all up into the age of Aquarius. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I'm excited to watch it, at least for as long as I'm here.
And I think the other thing that's really important to share, Wynn, is that, not everybody gets me. Not everyone believes that I can do these things that I do, or that these things happen through me as me.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes. Okay. Even my own house.
I'm sorry?
In my own house. So it's okay. So before we, start closing down, how did you transition to doing from advertising, right, to doing what you do now?
I tried to do both. I started my business, which is called Healing Resonance, because I named it that because this is a natural energy that's coming through me as me. Mm-hmm. But I started that business in 2013. I tried doing both. I had a pretty much full-time job as the off-site marketing manager for a resort hotel here in Maine. And I wasn't being treated well. I was getting upset a lot of the time. And I just finally said, this is not the vibe I want to be living in. I'm here to support others to find peace. And I want to be in peace as much as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. So I took a big leap of faith in shutting down a program of lack that I needed that income. Mm-hmm. And, I actually wrote a blog, which is your safety net holding you back? Mm. Because, if I had jumped sooner, where would I be now? I don't know. But the mind has a very linear path. So, for example, I could say, well, if I go and do my healing full time, am I going to make the same amount of money? The answer is no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I am so abundant because if I'm giving and I'm not receiving back, that creates a void. And the universe wants to fill that void. Mm-hmm. So my goodness, my abundance comes from non-linear sources that I might not have anticipated in my mind or in my ego.
Yeah, the last time I got an astrology reading, the astrologer said, by the way, you're really good at just attracting money for no reason, which has been true of my life. And he said, and by the way, you've earned it. It's not just one lifetime where you kind of have this check and balance, but like if you step into what you're meant to do, the universe will make sure you have the resources that you need. And so to your point, abundance is multi-dimensional. It can come in so many different ways. And part of what you said you did at the beginning was just actually helping to heal the earth energy, which who's going to pay for that? I mean, you're literally just doing a wonderful service without anybody being aware, but I know it fills you up. I've had times with animals that have crawled on my lap to get healing, and you're not getting paid, but it's the most joyous thing I experienced. Like, wow, I can't believe that just happened. And a lot of the stuff, to your point, is nobody knows about it or believes it, but you've had the experience, so you know what you do. And so do you have, moving forward now, an ideal client that you work with or attract?
So I think largely it's people for whom the medical field is saying there's no recourse, but they have a sense that, something can be done. And, I believe everything in this physical world starts in the non-physical as a thought or an emotion. So I help people understand the thought or the emotion that is manifesting as an illness, and that can help them to self-heal. Or people who like me have had a traumatic childhood in terms of abuse of various forms, to be able to reconnect with themselves as themselves without the conditions of you have to be this or you have to be that, or even to understand that sometimes what seems like an irrational fear can come from another lifetime.
Yes, absolutely. And so, what I'm hearing you say is not only do you work with the earth energy, but you can help someone almost go back multidimensionally to a time when maybe they didn't have the ailment that they have. Or you can help people retrieve the power that they gave away to others to feel safe and secure during their childhood, which maybe have been traumatic. And that you can really help probably not only talk them through that, but I'm guessing there's some kind of distance healing that you can do and so forth.
For some people, the trauma or the belief that they are not loved, which is, we are loved. We are loved, if not by humans, by, by love that connects us. So for some people that actually feels like a black tarry substance that I can help release. And I don't take that on myself. I'm just kind of like the middleman.
Yes.
I release it in the physical and pass it on to the higher realms for recycling.
Yeah, and they know what to do with it. They know how to take that and make it, useful in some other form. So I totally believe in everything that you're saying and what you do. And I really hope that people give you a look. I really think it's amazing. Like you said, you just feel the energy of the earth itself. And if I think about 2012, right, there's a lot of comments about that was the time when the earth did flip over into its own next dimension and wants us all to do the same. And so it's probably pretty cool to think that you might be one of those people who really felt that shift and can continue to feel like, okay, where else am I sort of going to do the work? And thank you.
And my personal shift was almost concurrent, right, with that.
Yeah.
So it is beautiful. I do just want to share one thing, Wynn, and that is if people are empaths, if they do feel, collective energy, you have control to put parameters on that. So there are times when I will say, okay, back off, you're giving me too much. So, even when we're in service like this, we have the ability to set our own boundaries.
Wow. And so that's something else you could work with someone who maybe is listening that is like, man, I just feel everything and people tell me I'm too sensitive, and you could maybe help them
Absolutely
feel masterful rather than, at the, at the effect of everything. So on the podcast right now, it says healingwithin.info. Is that one of the places people find you, or are there other places? I know I found you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I do have Healing Resonance LLC as my social media handle. So that works on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I have a podcast that's called Perspective Reboot, which is the name of my spiritual energy healing process. And that's, you can really find links to all of this at my website, which I'm using, this URL because it's easy for people.
Okay. And so they could listen to the podcast from your website about how you work with the energies.
I actually have like a 13 segment segment podcast, which covers various topics about, kind of opening up to yourself. And I have some guests on there. So it's kind of a wide range of things, but that's on major podcast channels too, Spotify, and I think it might be, I don't know if it's on Amazon or not, but yeah.
All right.
That's called Perspective Reboot.
So we have no excuse not to find you. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate what you're doing that I don't even know about, right? The silent energy shifts that you're helping the earth go through. So really appreciate that. I mean,
oh, thank
amazing.
you.
Yeah.
And you're doing great work too. Thank you.
Well, I'm having fun. So that's all I care about. All right. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.